All right, welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Steve Zimmerman, and we normally talk about all things firearms, 2A related, but I decided I was going to do a little bit different of a show today. I don't know what, I do know what made me change direction on this particular show, but before we get to that, I want you to notice, I had to dress up for the occasion. For a couple reasons. Now, maybe you saw on Twitter, I posted a video yesterday, which would have been the 13th of May. A lot of things have had happened. I was trying to record 2 different episodes last night. Both were meant to be what this episode is going to be tonight. But things just didn't work out. The first show that I was going to record was based on the history of firearms throughout history. I guess that is really redundant, but you know what I'm trying to say. That sucked. So as I was going through the recordings and the script, I got maybe halfway through the show and realized this show is a dumpster fire. So I quit. I stopped. I deleted all the footage. I didn't throw the script away because maybe I can recover it and do something better with it at a later time. But it was completely lousy. So out of frustration, I did some research on show number 2, which was I was excited to record. And I'm not going to tell you what that is because I will actually go back and recreate that episode at a later date because the content was sound. The only problem that wasn't sound was the sound. Confused yet? I was using a lot of videos, and for some reason the video feed, step back a page. In my frustration from the first recording from last night, something happened with my software. A lot of settings got just completely out of whack. I couldn't get my camera to be part of the feed, so there was no image of this pretty face. And once I got that situated, which it took me probably 45 minutes to get all the settings back where I initially had them, once I was satisfied with the video and my mic audio, which I thought was perfect, which my mic audio was just fine. I ran the recording as normal. I pulled the feed off online from online. Boy, I'm struggling speaking. And I recorded an entire show. It was over an hour. I recorded this episode, which I know some of you hate these longer episodes. I apologize. It's just the way it is. Anyway, I go to the editing. I was going to chop it up, make it a little bit more refined. As I imported the video to my editing software, I pull it up, and for some reason, the sound from the video feeds didn't work. It was there. It was just very, very quiet. And even my editing software, I had the feed volume cranked all the way up, and you couldn't even hear it. So I spent another hour recording an episode, which will later become an episode at some point. But not that feed, not that video. I threw that away, and I was extremely, extremely frustrated. In fact, by this time it was about 11:30. At night last night, and I was like, well, do I start over? Do I do this again? And I said, no, I'm going to bed. I'm extremely tired. I'm still extremely tired. Boy, was I mad. It was rather disappointing. So I have to make it up to you, my friends, my crowd, my fans, all 2 of you. I have to make it up to you. So I decided to do another recording tonight. I feel like I'm extremely obligated. I want to get shows out for you weekly, and the show must go on. Okay, so that's the intro to this show. Me airing my frustrations. But so you're thinking, Steve, why are you dressed so nicely? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, what really tops off this ensemble is the hat. This here hat. Maybe you saw my Twitter feed. You saw me opening this from Sig Soto. Dexter Taylor. I stand with Dexter Taylor. And I personally do. I wanted to show my support even a little bit more. Now, a couple things you can do. I need to link that in the show notes or wherever I'm going to put this. But Dexter Taylor, if you haven't heard, Dexter Taylor was sentenced yesterday. It was a mess, an absolute mess. The judge, same judge that would not allow him or his attorney to bring up the Second Amendment as a defense in her courtroom, felt a little bit perturbed at the backlash she got via the socials. I imagine some people, in fact, I do know that there were some people saying pretty disparaging things about her, which they shouldn't have done. But some of the backlash she received was completely legitimate. And because she was offended, I believe she retaliated. So the defense wanted the minimum, obviously, which was 3 years, was the minimum sentence that Dexter could have served. The prosecution, they were happy, I think, with 8 years, was what they were seeking, was 8 years. Now, this is just for paperwork, okay? Because everything Dexter was doing was protected under federal law. It was previous, the ghost gun law that New York had passed. He had built these previous to that action. Okay, so everything he did was protected under federal law. Okay, if you want to learn a little bit more about this Dexter's case, jump back to episode 239, and it goes into that. And there is a lot of information floating around on Dexter Taylor's situation. Anyway, back to sentencing. Now, like I said, defense wanted 3 years, prosecution, the state prosecutor wanted 8. Well, because this judge had her feelings hurt, she decided to go to the extreme maximum, and she gave Dexter 10 years in federal prison for violent crime, which he did not commit any. There's no victim. I guess you could say that New York State was a victim because Dexter didn't play their little licensing scheme. Okay. So now my friend Dexter Taylor which I'm sure he's already on top of it. His attorneys are on top of it. They are filing the paperwork they need to appeal. But in reality, Dexter's going to serve at least two years in prison while it goes through the appeals process. At least 2 years. Could be more. Maybe some things could happen. I don't know. Stranger things have happened out there. But as of right now, my friend Dexter Taylor is dealing some serious time in a place he does not belong. Now, I don't know if you guys don't follow me on Twitter, why not? For starters, or X, whatever you want to call it. I don't do anything. I have been able to make some really good friends. I'm a simple man blessed with many friends on Twitter. A lot of these folks that I've met on Twitter are very creative, very ambitious. One of them would be, I think it's The Real Busybody is what he goes by, who lives in New York. He's been very actively involved in Dexter's case, trying to get the word out, trying to get people involved and all that jive. Well, he was able to do basically a live video broadcast not in the courtroom, but at the courthouse in New York. Once it was time for sentencing, he was not allowed to bring his phone in, which is understandable. But during his live broadcast, he had a chance to talk to Dexter's family, his mom, his dad, and his nephew. Fantastic people. One thing I was really touched by while listening to Dexter's mom speak, she gave us a little inside baseball on who Dexter truly is. Now, those of us that have known Dexter for a little while, I haven't known him as long as many of the others have. He's a very good man. He speaks a lot about freedom. He's a God-fearing man, very compassionate with those around him. He's never been in trouble with the law, not even a speeding ticket, not a parking ticket, ever. He's been very straight-laced, kept himself clean. He helped his nephew learn how to code. He was a pioneer in the coding platform for computers, for tech industry for many, many years. Very intelligent man. And I know that the jurors didn't hear a lot of this information, which is too bad. And maybe if they got to know Dexter the way I know Dexter, things would have gone differently. There's a lot of things we could talk about the past, and we can't change those things. We're now we're trying to fix the future with Dexter. So all that comes down to this. Dexter has a fundraising page, which I'll link again in the show notes. If you have the means to donate, anything, $2, 50 cents, whatever, anything will help Dexter. This is going to be extremely, extremely expensive for Dexter and his family. His parents put up their house to get Dexter out of jail that first go round. This is expensive. It's an expensive, painful process. Impacted his family severely. He's got a teenage daughter. She won't be able to hang out with her dad very much for the next 10 years. Dexter loves his family. So he's keeping his spirits up as much as possible. But we all know it's not an easy road for that family at all. So if you have the means to donate, please, that would be helpful. One way that you can show support for Dexter is these hats, obviously right here, sigsoto.com. He makes these hats for us. Well, not for us. I bought the hat from Sig. I didn't, or Soto. I mean, it wasn't a gift. I paid for it. You can go there, purchase the hat. You can donate. One of my other friends on Twitter, Joe Lanou, he's selling the same hat on his website. They're $10 more, but that $10 goes towards Dexter's fund directly. Joe doesn't take any money. So there's those ways to donate. If you can, that would be great. Greatly appreciated. I know I'm kind of going long-winded. Before we even get to content of the show, just bear with me. There's one more thing I want to bring up, and this is one thing I'm very excited for. Now, this group of friends that I've made on X or Twitter or whatever the hell you want to call it, we've come up with a plan. This is outside of Dexter Taylor, but Dexter Taylor, without him even realizing it, he's played an integral part in this next project that the Range Minded Podcast is going to be intimately involved with. Not like, you get what I'm trying to say. The podcast is spending a lot of time and energy on this next chapter of the podcast, and I'm extremely excited. So this group of friends on Twitter, we've come up with a network called the We the People Network. Now, what this ends up being is a basically, just like it sounds, a TV channel on Twitter. We're going to do a lot of spaces. We found a way to run shows 24 hours a day. So the Range Minded Podcast will play probably at least once a day, every day, and you'll get a new episode every week. But that way it gets content that I create out, that we have a lot of other, I won't just say 2A minded content, but there is, I don't know if you remember John at 2A Talking Tactical. He's a part of this program as well, but it's not just strictly 2A content. It is freedom content. It is, as I hit the mic, talking with my hands, it is something that is going to help us reach more people with a message of freedom, not just 2A content, but freedom. It's definitely something that's being starved out of society, and we want to be able to bring a buffet of freedom content to those out in the Twitterverse. So look for the We the People Network. It's something that's just really started this week. It's going to be gaining steam. We're going to be getting more content. Thus, and when we get more content involved, we're going to get more eyes on us. So let me say this: if you're a 2A, no, not 2A. If you're a content creator geared toward the freedom of the United States to the people, contact me. Let's figure some things out. If you're an advertiser, if you have products, if you want to get things in front of a lot of people, we continually have spaces where we have, a minimum of 700-800 people. I just checked in on the latest space that's happening right now, a live space. He's got some around 2,000 people, 2,000 captive people that are eager to have their eyes on things. So if you're a content creator, if you want to get a new product out in front of people, here's your chance. contact me. You can contact Joe Lanou on X. Anyway, we'll have all that information available. Honestly, if you want to just reach out to me, you can. I'll get that to the right people, and let's talk. Let's get things happening. Okay, enough with the stuff, with the hand gesturing. Do you guys want to get to the show? You're probably like, Steve, would you shut up? And I will. Back to this jacket. I'll shut up. But wait, I have more to say. So I decided to dress up for this show. Because we're going across the pond. Yes, you see, we're going to the intellectual Oxford. Let's jump to this. This is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. Okay, the reason why I bring this to you is because I want you to see two things. I want you to see how incompetent a lot of our representation is, which many of you already understand that. But I want you to see how outside citizens of the world, outside the United States, how they see our leadership. Okay? And maybe you saw some of this, but I want you guys to hear the entire stuff. Okay? So let's jump here. Sorry, I gotta manipulate my screen here. All right, like I said, this is Nancy Pelosi at Oxford. And let's just listen to things that she has to say.
So it's 1 minute for the Good evening. Thank you all very much for this very stimulating evening, Mr.
By the way, this is a debate on populism versus democracy.
This very important challenge. The proposition says that it is a threat to democracy. It didn't say it will cause it. It said it is a threat. So remember what the proposition is. Now listen attentively to our two friends here in their description of populism, and our white tie and tail gentleman and his comments.
She didn't even have the respect to remember their names.
A very compelling argument. It would have been so appropriate 200 years ago in the time of...
Now, it's a little hard to hear because she's not talking into the mic.
Old notion of populism. For today, I always like to put down temporal markers. For today, how populism weighs in is in a way that is different.
Yeah, I've got that all the way turned up.
If you want to debate with me, define your terms. Well, let's define what is happening with populism today. Populism is sprung on some of the people that have been named here, put forth with an ethno-nationalist populism. In our country, we see nationalism, isolationism. We had a fight to get the bill that we got last week, and generated by an ethnic negativity about immigrants, young incumbents too, immigrants, people who are different from them, these people, and the rest. Our problem with...
I cannot stand her hand gestures.
Is a definition
now, if you're only listening to this...
What is democracy?
She talks with her right hand.
Democracy
in this obsessive,
democracy is
spastic manner.
Free and fair elections. Democracy is about the independent judiciary. It's about freedom of the press, to have transparency and to have accountability of elected officials to the people. It's about all of that. And that is everything that the populist regime in Washington, D.C. is against. Populism is about fighting the ethno-nationalistic populism, as is the threat to democracy, is about threatening what they call elites. A free press. No thanks. Free press. It's about fighting issues that relate to free and fair elections, where we have voter suppression to the nth degree under this regime, and a resistance to passing the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Act, all of that. because they want to contain who votes. Now, the issue of independent judiciary. We owe so much to the UK, or England as it was, when it put forth so many things at Runnymede, England. And one of them was trial by jury. When King John came, the barons...
I'm not even sure if she knows what she's talking about here.
12 chairs. And what sprang from that was a jury of your peers, 12 peers. And that sprang from the Magna Carta, and something that we hold dear in our country. Right now, we see trial by jury threatened by vicious assaults on the jurors. So when we talk about populism...
Notice she doesn't say anything about Supreme Court justices being stalked.
Today, not 200 years ago, but today. And if you are humored by some of the, named Ted Cruz and people like that, that may be humorous to you, but it ain't funny to us because it has a direct impact on what's happening. Now, here's the thing that is so sad about all of this. These people who are populist and go out there and make all these claims take advantage of people who have legitimate economic concerns. In this day and age, people are concerned, and some of you have heard me say this before, are concerned about
now this whole conversation of hers, debate section, is
going to thrive and survive.
Is about 13 minutes or so, a little less than.
They're concerned about globalization. They're concerned about immigration. They're concerned about anything new because it's not familiar to them. And so along comes a snake oil salesman, sells them a bill of goods, and then takes office, and the only legislation put forth is a bill that gives a tax bill that gives 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, that has legislation to take away their health care. If that isn't enough for you, when we didn't have the bill to go give aid to Ukraine and the rest, the speaker said to me, I can't do it until I do the budget bill. What was holding up the budget bill? After giving a $2 trillion tax cut to the wealthiest 1% in our country, $2 trillion added to the national debt, unpaid for. The big issue that held us up at the end was something called WIC, food for women, infants and children, for new families. We can't afford to give that food. It's going to add to the national debt. That's what these purveyors of populism sold a bill of goods to these people who grasped it because they had legitimate concerns that have to be respected and they have to be addressed. But the fact is that democracy can, since your 200-year-ago version about Andrew Jackson and all that, so much has happened that our distinguished person, I don't know your name, but thank you for your pro-argument.
Again, she didn't care to think about or write down his name.
Come down the pike, destroy the press. What do the Republicans say? Fake news. So they're diminishing that in the eyes of these poor souls who are looking for some answers. We've given them to them, but they're blocked by some of their views on guns. They have the 3 Gs, guns, gays, God. That would be a woman's right.
I don't even know what she's talking about. Guns, gays, and God. I've never heard that platform in a conservative manner.
Choose. And the cultural issues cloud some of their reception of an argument that really is in their interest. I don't agree with you that we don't accuse people of not knowing what they're doing. They know what their personal interest is. We respect that. But the fact is that using whether it's people different from me, nationalism, populism, is a very dangerous threat to democracy, not just in America where we're seeing it play out, but in the whole world, in the context of a fight between democracy and autocracy our, not mine, but the version of populism, ethno-nationalist populism, which tries to bring down education and fake news, the media, which is a protector of democracy, that version is contributing in countries other than our country, and is
the old
a danger
sandbag
to
sitting there.
democracy.
To her right, your left, is Paul Pelosi, her husband.
Victory that
Even
we
he's not
must
buying her
win,
bullshit.
because it will only make matters worse if they have another stay at what they're doing to the courts in our country, the fear that they're instilling in jurists in our country, the suppression of the vote in our country, the role of their big, dark, rich, billionaire donors who don't want to pay taxes, suffocating the airways from the fossil fuel industry and the gun industry and the rest of that. So money and populism, sadly, have gone together with this ethno-nationalist, what they call elite, which we call education, free press, and the rest. So I urge you to think in terms of the word. It says it's a threat. You're going to deny that it's a threat to democracy in the versions that have emerged in America so clearly? And why does everybody here say to me, what happens if he gets elected? Well, you can't let that happen, because for us, this election is Washington crossing the Delaware. This is about a democratic, no offense to the Brits, but the fact is also that what happened here at Runnymede, the Magna Carta, yes, the first Parliament and the rest of that, has a great contribution to democracy in the world, but our country was founded on the principle that all people are created equal. A constitution that tried to implement that wasn't perfect from the beginning, but they were able to amend it to end slavery and all the other remnants of what came before. But populism in the version of Andrew Jackson, which was described here, is not the threat that we are talking about. That's part of it. But the fact that's so sad is a misrepresentation of people who exploit the populist attitude of, I want to have my say, and then use it to get elected and then hurt those people the most. Hurt those people the most with it, as I say, unfair taxation, unfair distribution of resources. A budget should be a statement of our national values. Instead, it's a vehicle to put more money in the pockets of his contributors. And on top of all of that, taking away health care and the rest
calling the
by
kettle
lying
black
about it all. That's about deaths, this, and abortion. It's not about any of that. So if there could be truth in their message, I think that people would react differently, because they would know quite clearly how it affects them and their lives, where they know better than anybody their kitchen table concerns on how they can pay the bills, educate their children, save for retirement, pay the rent, and the rest of that. So my friends, this is interesting academically, intellectually.
She's basically telling him, you don't know what you're talking about.
On the ground, populism, as the version that we see now, is a threat to democracy that's really hard to deny. I was eager to hear their arguments, but what I heard could have been made 200 years ago and not facing the realities that we see. So I urge you all to vote in favor of the proposition.
Now she thinks she's back at home and not at Oxford, inviting him to vote on a bill.
Sultan, I was ready to vote for you for one of those positions. I really was. But I'm not sure now, because I don't know that you could possibly believe the presentation. I know this is academic.
I wonder how much she drank after this.
Maybe you believe it. I respect that. But what I do respect is our democracy. And just tell you one more thing. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, where our national anthem was written by Francis Scott Key. And
I wish she'd speak into the mic, too. So frustrating.
National anthem. And it's our motivation right now in some of our campaigning. He said, proof through the night that our flag was still there. Proof through the night that our flag was still there. We have to prove through the night of this election that our flag is still there. A flag that we pledge to every civic day with liberty and justice for
No, she
all.
didn't say under God at all in there.
That is supporting democracy, supporting our flag and all it stands for, and it is threatened by this version of populism that exists today. Please vote aye. Thank you.
All right. So, you can see that Miss Nancy Pelosi is, I truly believe that because Oxford does these debates frequently, right? They have these counter arguments to debate back and forth. It's an exercise mostly for these students that are far more intellectual than she is, and far more eloquent with their language. They have the ability to debate at a different level than what she's used to, because the American debate stage, as far as the political spectrum, is pretty amateur. It's mostly name-calling, finger-pointing, and grandstanding. But these Oxford students do it a little bit differently, and that's what I wanted you to see. So that was, like I said, that was Miss Nancy Pelosi, and her eagerness to share ridiculousness, okay? Now, remember, she got this stupid medal from the president, who really is just giving medals out like candy because he's fairly invalid. Invalid. That's not invalid. Invalid. You know what I mean. He's asleep most of the time. And when he's not asleep, he's eating pudding or getting his diaper changed. One or the other. When he's trying to communicate, it's slurred speech. He's clearly got some issues. Clearly. And the American people see it. And I think, honestly, some on the left, they're either doing it deliberately, which is disgustingly shameful, or they're just completely benign or blind to it all. I don't know. It's one or the other. The world sees it. The world sees a weak leader. And this is going to be brought up by my future friend. His name, well, I'll pull it up. Winston something. This is fantastic. Let me jump back over to this. Absolutely fantastic.
Look to Mr. Winston Marshall to close the case for the opposition.
Now this is almost 14 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Don't worry, sound gets better.
words have a tendency to change meaning. When I was a boy, woman meant someone who didn't have a cock. Populism has become a word used synonymously.
This young man
with
is
racist.
on point.
We've heard ethno-nationalist, with bigot, with hillbilly, redneck, with deplorables. Elites use it to show their contempt for ordinary people. This is a recent change. Not long ago, Barack Obama, while still president at the North America's Leaders Summit in June 2016, he took umbrage with the notion that Trump be called a populist. How could Trump be called a populist? He doesn't care about working people. If anything, Obama argued, he was the populist. If anything, Obama argued, Bernie was the populist. It was Bernie who'd spent 5 decades.
So you catch what's going on here? Pelosi said Trump was the populist and populism was a danger to democracy.
Something curious happens. If you watch Obama's speeches after that point, more and more recently, he uses the word populist interchangeably with strongman, with authoritarian. The word changes meaning. It becomes a negative, a pejorative, a slur. To me, populism is not a dirty word. Since the 2008 crash, and specifically the $1 trillion Wall Street bailout, we are in the populist age. And for good reason. The elites have failed. Let me address some common fallacies, some of which have been made tonight. If the motion was that demagoguery was a threat to democracy, I would be on that side of the House. If the motion was that political violence was a threat to democracy, I'd be on that side of the House. January 6th has been mentioned. A dark day for America indeed. And I'm sure Congresswoman Pelosi will agree that the entire month of June 2020, when the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon was under siege and under insurrection by radical progressives, those too were dark days for America. Yes?
There is no equivalence there. So that, yes.
So you don't agree? That's fine, you don't agree, that's fine.
I don't know if you can hear what she just said. She said there's no equivalence there. When he said that the Floyd riots, or the Summer of Peace, or whatever, is the same as January 6th. She replies, "You are not. There's no equivalence there." So, but it's not like what happened on January 6th, which was an insurrection indicted by the President of the United States. So, violence that destroys everybody else's property is totally different than violence. Well, there wasn't even violence. Pretended violence. Well, not even pretended. I believe there was some incitement. I believe that there was some influence. I don't believe it came from Trump. I guess I'll put it that way. We got to be careful with that one.
Which was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States.
So you don't agree? But you'll condemn those days. My point, though, is that all political movements are susceptible to violence and indeed insurrection. And if we were arguing that fascism was a threat to democracy, I'd be on that side of the House. Indeed, the current populist age is a movement against fascism. I've got quite a lot to get through. Populism, as you know, is the politics of the ordinary people against an elite. Populism is not a threat to democracy. Populism is democracy. And why else have universal suffrage if not to keep elites in check? Ladies and gentlemen, given the success of Trump, and more recently Javier Milei taking a chainsaw to the state behemoth of Argentina's bureaucratic monster, you'd be mistaken for thinking this was a right-wing populist age. But that would be ignoring Occupy Wall Street. That would be ignoring Jeremy Corbyn's for the many, not the few. That would be ignoring Bernie against the billionaires, RFK Jr. against Big Pharma, and more recently, George Galloway against his better judgment. Now,
I don't know who George Galloway is.
All of them, including Galloway, recognize genuine concerns of ordinary people being otherwise ignored by the establishment. I'm actually rather surprised that our esteemed opposition, Congressman Pelosi, is on that side of the motion. I thought the left was supposed to be anti-elite. I thought the left was supposed to be anti-establishment. Today, particularly in America, the globalist left have become the establishment. I suppose for Ms. Pelosi to have taken this side of the motion, she'd be arguing herself out of a job. But it's here in Britain where right and left populists united for the supreme act of democracy, Brexit. Polls have showed the number one reason people voted for Brexit was sovereignty, for more democracy.
Point of information.
Thank you. What was the response of the Brussels elite? They did everything in their power to undermine the democratic will of the British people, and the Westminster elite were just as disgraceful. As we've heard, David Cameron called the voters fruitcakes, loonies, and closet racists. The Liberal Democrats did everything they could to overturn a democratic vote. Keir Starmer campaigned for a second referendum. Elites would have had us voting and voting and voting until we voted their way. Indeed, that's what happened in Ireland and in Denmark. Let's look at some of the other populist movements. The Hong Konger populist revolt is literally called the pro-democracy movement. The farmer revolts from Netherlands to Germany, France, Greece to Sri Lanka. Farmers are taking their tractors to the road to protest ESG policy that's floated down to us from those all-knowing, infallible elites of Davos. The trucker movement in Canada became anti-elitist when petty tyrant Prime Minister Justin Trudeau froze their bank accounts, not the behavior of a democratic head of state. The Gilets jaunes in France, ULEZ in London, working people protesting policy that hurt them. And how are they treated? They're called conspiracy theorists. They're called far right, by the mayor as well. Ladies and gentlemen, populism is the voice of the voiceless. The real threat to democracy is from the elites. Now, don't get me wrong, we need elites. If President Biden has shown us anything, we need someone to run the countries. When the president has severe dementia, it's not just America that crumbles, the whole world burns. But let's examine the elites. European corporations spend over 1 billion euros a year lobbying Brussels. US corporations spend over $2 billion a year lobbying in DC. 2/3 of Congress receive funding from pharmaceutical companies. Pfizer alone spent $11 million in 2021. They made over $10 billion in profit. No wonder then that 66% of Americans think the economy is rigged against them for the rich and the powerful. And by the way,
Sorry about that.
we used to have a word for when big business and big government were in cahoots. And I think any students here of early 20th century Italian history know what I'm talking about. What about big tech? Throughout the pandemic, Biden's team, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security colluded with big tech in censoring dissenting voices, not kooky conspiracy theorists. People like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the Stanford epidemiologist. People like Harvard scientist Martin Kulldorff. People spreading true information, not misinformation, true information at odds with the government narrative. Need I remind you, democracy without free speech is not democracy. This was a direct breach, by the way, of the First Amendment.
These friends across the pond get it better than Nancy Pelosi and her cronies.
Before COVID, intelligence services colluded with big tech to have Trump suspended off Twitter. Yes, the same platform which hosted the Taliban and Ayatollah deaf to Israel Khomeini, they thought the president crossed the line when he tweeted on Jan 6th, quote, "Remain peaceful, no violence, respect the law and our great men and women in blue." That's a quote. You may be thinking now that Trump is a populist. You are right. He didn't accept the 2020 elections, and he should have. So should Hillary in 2016, so should Brussels, and so should Westminster in 2016, and so too should Congresswoman Pelosi, instead of saying the 2016 election was, quote, hijacked. Quote, hijacked. Thank you.
That we don't accept the results of it.
Okay. What about the mainstream media? Let me read you some mainstream media headlines. The New Yorker, the day before the 2016 election. The case against democracy. The Washington Post, the day after the election. The problem with our government is democracy. The LA Times, June 2017. The British election is a reminder of the perils of too much democracy. Vox, June 2017. The two eminent political scientists say the problem with democracy is voters. New York Times, June 2017. The problem with participatory democracy is the participants. Mainstream media elites are part of a class who don't just disdain populism, they disdain the people. If the Democrats had put half their energy into delivering for the people, Trump wouldn't even have a chance in 2024. He shouldn't have a chance. You've had power for 4 years. From the fabricated Steele dossier to trying to take him off the ballot in both Maine and Colorado, the Democrats are the anti-Democrat party. All we need now is the Republicans to come out as the pro-monarchist party. Ladies and gentlemen, populism is not a threat to democracy, but I'll tell you what is. It's elites ordering social media to censor political opponents. It's police shutting down dissenters, be it anti-monarchists in this country or gender-critical voices here, or last week in Brussels, the National Conservative movement. I'll tell you what is a threat to democracy. It's Brussels, DC, Westminster, the mainstream media, big tech, big pharma, corporate collusion, and the Davos cronies. The threat to democracy comes from those who write off ordinary people as deplorable. The threat to democracy comes from those who smear working people as racist. The threat to democracy comes from those who write off working people as populists. And I'll say one last thing. This populist age can be brought to an end at the snap of a finger. All that needs to be done is for elites to start listening to, respecting, and, God forbid, working for ordinary people. Thank you.
Oh, so Nancy Pelosi, in her elegant speaking style, just got schooled from some kid from Oxford. Now, I thought this was interesting. Maybe you guys thought this was completely boring. But hopefully you see a little deeper than that. The youngsters, now I sound like my dad. You youngsters, right? The next generation of voters is not as thick as we think they might be, especially outside of the United States. That gets more news than the fake news in the American media. They get a little bit more contrast than what's being fed to us. I find it interesting. I find it very intriguing indeed that Miss Pelosi thought she had this debate in the bag, yet to get schooled by this Brit. It was awesome. It was awesome. Now, I know, like I said, this is not normally the stuff that we talk about. It's not really 2A related, but in a way that it is. In a way, this is more than just international politicking. Now, Nancy spoke with extreme confidence. She thought for sure she had won these people over. I don't believe she did. I could be wrong. Maybe she spoke in very good confidence with these folks. I don't think so. Now, maybe you saw, this is why I bring this up. Now, maybe you saw old man Nalder. You know, there was this hearing the other day on national reciprocity. Now, it wasn't national reciprocity for concealed carry for you and me, but it was for currently serving and retired law enforcement, because they're so much better at firing guns than the public. And it was about an hour-long debate. I'm not going to be... In fact, never mind. It's about an hour-long debate. Thomas Massey, thankfully, he brought up and chimed in and said, hey, we're talking about just a segment of the United States population. This should be brought up for everyone in the United States. There should be national reciprocity for all citizens of the United States, not retired law enforcement. And then old man Nalder, the high-waisted fiend himself, coined by another YouTuber there, Brendan from Langley Outdoors. He calls him the high-waisted fiend. I agree. He looks kind of like, side note, he looks like Danny DeVito when he played the Penguin in Batman. It's about the same, right? He could easily play a villain in a Batman movie. He quoted the Second Amendment. He said a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, comma, the right of the, and then he stops for a second, shall not be infringed. He deliberately omitted the right of the people out of that quote. Thomas Massey chimed up not long after when it's his turn again. He said, I'm something like, I must have missed it, but my distinguished colleague forgot to mention the people in his quote of the Second Amendment. That wasn't an accident. I do not believe for a second Jerry Nalder forgot to put the people in the quote of the Second Amendment. He almost said it, but he took it out because his argument is a flawed argument that was clarified by Heller and in Bruin, that the right of the people to keep and bear arms is the main part of the Second Amendment. It was designed to keep the government's grubby fingers off of the means of the people to protect themselves from enemies, and that includes the government. It wasn't about hunting. It wasn't about sport. It was about tyranny. Now, you might say, Steve, we've talked about this before. We know all this stuff. I want you guys to seriously look at the discussions, the opinions from Heller and Bruin, because those two opinions in the affirmative, not opinions, is that what it's called? You know what I'm talking about. I think it's opinions. From the affirmative votes, right? So you have Clarence Thomas and was it Alito? In those cases, you need to read those. You need to read them because you're not getting all the information, including from 2A communities. You're not getting all the information because there's so much in there. I don't know how many gun tubers have actually read all of the Bruin decision, all of it. I have. It's a lot. But there's so much clarity in that document, in those words from Clarence Thomas, that lets you see exactly where their mind was and what they went through to make this decision. And there's a reason, and I'm telling you this too, there's a reason why they want to pack the court system. Because they don't want these opinions, descriptive of history opinions, getting into the public hands. In my opinion, I could be wrong. Because history, text, and tradition destroys the support for socialism. It destroys it. It destroys the liberal view of democracy and replaces it with the true version of a republic. And that's what our country's founded on, as a republic. A representative government, not a majority rules type government. It's important for you to understand this, okay? Let's shift gears. It's been a hot minute already. Let me make sure I get my screen up the right way. Okay. So I just want to share a couple more things with you, and then we're going to close out for this evening. First of all, I really appreciate all those who spend time with me. I truly appreciate your willingness to take sometimes more than an hour listening to my sexy voice or seeing me in my nice sport coat and my I Stand with Dexter Taylor hat, which will be a constant from now on forever in these recordings. Your time is very valuable to me. And I hope that I've earned your respect, that I've earned your support. Now, this sounds like a campaign speech all of a sudden. I'm not running for any kind of office. But what I do want you to do is, this is a call to action. This is an election year. I need you guys to be registered to vote. And I need you guys to use that registration and put it to action. We see the clown car, otherwise known as Congress. Right? You guys know what a clown car is? They have these little tiny cars, often like a Mini Cooper, the old school Mini Cooper. And they put like 15 clowns in there. Somehow they fit all these people inside this car. That's Congress. We have clowns from both sides of the aisle. Now, you could say, well, maybe it's a bigger car. No, it is a small car filled with ignorant clowns. We need to empty that car. Both sides of the aisle. It's got to be emptied. This is ridiculous. We're a laughing stock to the rest of the world. When America is impaired, the rest of the world is impaired as well. The world looks to the United States. The world looks and strives and languishes for true leadership in the United States, because the United States has the ability and the voice of reason across the globe. When we have representation that is incapable of being the tough guy, incapable of arguing true reason, even at Oxford, incapable of making sound arguments about populism and democracy. When we have leadership, air quotes, that is willing to omit significant language out of the Bill of Rights when discussing freedoms or restrictions thereof on the people. There's a massive problem there. I want to show you something else real quick. Speaking, this is a complete side note. I know I told you that we would be done. I apologize. Let me just pull this up real quick because this is hilarious. We talk about, again, leadership that is incapable of making strong arguments, unwilling to do the research to make strong arguments, or deliberately deceitful in their arguments. This is from Ben Cardin, Democrat senator. Maybe you've already seen this thing floating around. And he since deleted this post, but it's hilarious. Okay. Let's just read the quote. Okay. This is his post. It's time to pass mandatory background check, bans on assault weapon and high ammo stocks. Huh? Okay, first of all, did you make this tweet? And hit post or send or whatever? Did you have a staffer make this tweet and post it? These are the people trying to make rules about your constitutional right to keep and bear arms, and they can't even make a coherent sentence on what they want to ban. We are a clown car. Well, we're not. Congress is the clown car. And we're the proprietors at the circus, laughing, but doing nothing about emptying the car. It is an election year. It is the year you get to vote the clowns out of the circus. It is the year that you get to clean your state's leadership. Don't vote party lines. This is why Colorado got what they got. This is why, honestly, Boise, what we're getting here in Idaho is slowly eroding. Our rights are slowly eroding. It's why California is gone the way it is. It's why Oregon is going the way that it is. It's why Washington is going the way that it is. It's why every state in the union will lose its rights bit by bit, because the proprietors of the circus are just watching and not getting rid of the clown car. Use your right to vote. Use your voice. Start at your local elections and make those changes, because those changes influence you. When you have confidence in your local representation, it is far easier to move that to the state representation and thus the federal legislation of representation, Utilize your rights. There's a reason why your vote matters. There's a reason why Biden is slipping in the polls, because America is waking up. They're slowly seeing what is being played on us. We're being played. And social media is part of it. The regular news media is part of it. Most of our leadership on both sides of the aisle are responsible for putting scales over our eyes. We have to get rid of the clown car and replace it with real, honest, hardworking Americans who care about what's happening in our country. Do you think the border's secure? Do you think inflation's down? Do you think fuel's affordable? Do you think food is affordable? Do you think your housing's affordable? Have you guys tried to buy windshield wipers for your vehicles lately? Everything is going up. Not quite. The cost of goods is going up because the value of your dollar is decreasing due to massive inflation, coupled with debt that we've accrued because we haven't been able to make ends meet, coupled with massive federal spending. And when massive federal spending takes place, they have to increase the taxes to try and bring this cycle of money back into the coffers so they can spend it again. But while they don't have enough taxation going on, they have to print more money, which makes your dollar worth less. That's why when you go to the grocery store and buy what used to be $50 in groceries and now is $200 in groceries, it's because the clowns. It's because you've been too passive in your responsibility as a citizen, and the clown car has gotten way too crowded, and the clowns are running the circus. That's my rant. Friends, if you like this content, if you enjoy anything that I have to share, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Follow me on my social media accounts, even TikTok. TikTok hates me right now. Doesn't matter what I post. If it has anything to do with 2A or freedom or anything like that, I'm basically shadow banned. I get like 200 views. But you're welcome to follow me on the talk. That's totally cool. You can find me on Instagram, Range Minded Podcast. You can find me on Twitter, Range Minded. You can find me on Facebook, Range Minded Podcast. Honestly, if you're having struggle finding all that, just go to the website, rangemindedpodcast.com. You can find all that information there. There's also a link tree that I think I put on my Twitter feed. I definitely did on my Instagram feed, Range Minded Podcast. Do it. Leave me a comment. If there's something you want to hear, if there's a guest you want to have me to have on, let me know. I want to make sure you're getting what you want, because somebody's got to represent you guys. Empty out that clown car. Be safe, you guys. It's getting crazy out there. Do your best to be awesome citizens. Be good parents. Be good children. Be the neighbor you want to have next door. Okay? Don't forget, you guys got to take somebody shooting. All right. Peace out, you guys. See you later.